Now let's move ahead with your favorite part, the working of AWS Cloudwatch. So when we think about how does Cloudwatch work, the first thing that you should remind yourself is that it's nothing but a metrics repository. So when we have services in AWS that have metrics, if you want, you can also create your own metrics. You can also do that using the put metrics data on Cloudwatch. So remember, you can also create your own metrics in Cloudwatch. So the basic idea here is that if I want to judge the current state of an instance or resource, I need a benchmark, isn't it? For example, if I tell you, if the CPU utilization of the instance goes above 85%, then I want to scale a new resource. So what you will say then? Then my benchmark is CPU utilization and the threshold value that I have here is 85%, isn't it? Because if the CPU utilization of the instance goes above 85%, then I want to scale a new resource. So 85% becomes the threshold and the benchmark on which I'm trying to judge the resource state is CPU utilization. So remember that. So if I have a matrix called CPU utilization and I send log streams that point to that matrix for it to keep track of the current state of the instance, I can create an alarm using that matrix and measure it or judge it based on if that has reached 85% or not, because that will be my threshold value. So using that matrix of CPU utilization, I can put a threshold value there and I can create an alarm state using that particular threshold value in that particular matrix. And one more very important thing to remember is these metrics that you are creating right now are regionally scoped, but you can use CloudWatch cross-region stats functionality to get them in a single place. And I can write a condition that if it does, use the auto-scaling policy to spin up a new instance. And I can further enhance it as well as send notifications to users using the SNS topic or perform any operation we need. And that's what we see here. So we have the services which are being connected to CloudWatch for metrics and log push. We have the CloudWatch alarm, which makes use of the metrics to scale instances using the auto scaling group. And SNS here helps to send out the messages or notification. When I show this to you, you will be able to relate to it in a way that might help you visualize how things actually work. So this is basically your overall picture. So you can see the collect part here, you can see the monitor part here, you can see where we are actually acting upon the particular event that we have, and how we are actually trying to analyze the resources that we have here. So this is the overall picture and nothing more. But we still have a few more concepts to cover because you know, right? You learn once and never forget. Hopefully, isn't it? So now let's understand more about alarms and events. So now let's take another example here because you guys love real-time examples, isn't it? So the biggest thing right now for gamers is that to get their hands on a PlayStation 5. This is a real-world hypothesis. Let us assume that this is the case. My friend wants to get one as well. So what I did was I wrote a Lambda function to fetch the records of the currently available stock. This is just an example. Don't do this. You'll be banned. And what I did is I created a matrix which keeps account of the HTTP status code of 200. And I have created an alarm using the same. And I have kept the condition that if the threshold count is at 5 or more, send the notification to the user. So whenever I call the Lambda function, it will fetch the information from the website about the count of the current stock that I have. And once the HTTP status code is 200, it will send the matrix data and carry out the cycle. But what if I wanted this to be scheduled? So what I did was I added a CloudWatch event. So CloudWatch event time-based that triggers the Lambda function every 1 minute. With CloudWatch events, I get the feature where I can create a scheduled event and point that event to a target. That is here my Lambda function, isn't it? That's very clear. In that way, I can just sit back and get notified whenever the PlayStation 5 is in stock. And my friend as well. So as you can see here, the CloudWatch event that you have delivers a near real-time stream of system events that describe the change in AWS resources. So that is what it is trying to tell. So when the time-based CloudWatch event is triggered, every 1 minute it is trying to invoke the target here. And the alarm actually performs one or more actions based on the value of the metric or expression relative to the threshold over a number of time periods. So the threshold value is 5 here. So whenever it is reached, it is trying to send out the notification. So CloudWatch alarms. As we have discussed before, you will be aware that CloudWatch alarms can help you automatically initiate actions on your behalf based on the metrics that you have, and it keeps focusing on a single metric and keeps track of the change in the behavior of your resources over a period of time, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour, 4 hour, 1 day, and it's up to 15 months. Okay, so it can keep track of your metrics up to that long. And when we create an alarm, we need to think of 3 settings. The first one is period, which indicates the single frame of time, which could be in seconds or minutes. That is based on your time period, based on which we evaluate the metric. Next is evaluation period. So this is basic. It's your evaluation period. That is the most recent period used to determine the state of the alarm. The third one is the data point to alarm. This is the number of time frames or data points which must be breaching the threshold for the alarm to go to the alarm state. Don't worry about this. I'll explain you this with an example. So just think about these 3 settings right now. Okay, let's take this example and let's understand how to read this. So let's suppose we have the evaluation interval of 3 seconds and the data point to alarm is also 3. So what it means is that if we have 3 data points that are breaching the threshold, the alarm will go to the alarming state. So this is your threshold value that you have, the line in the blue that you see here. And this is the exact value that is the current state of the resource. So it started off from 1 and it has taken a peak and it has crossed the threshold value here. That is in between 2 and 3, isn't it? So once it has crossed, it has reached the 4th unit, but the threshold value that we have set is 3. But now it has already breached. So there actually begins the data points to alarm. So from 3, we start counting how many number of points has been breached. So this is 1, this is the second one, and this is the third one. And clearly we have a breach of 3 data points. So now this will be a placeholder for which the alarms will be triggered. So as you can see here, after 3 periods over threshold, an action is invoked because it has crossed the threshold value and it has invoked or it has crossed 3 data points. 3, 4, 5, and it has crossed 3 time periods as well. So now after 3 points, what happened? It has reduced below the threshold value and now it has gone from 6 to 7, but it has not breached the threshold value here as well. So now if you see, it has peaked to 5.5, but it actually drastically reduced to 2 and then to 1 or 0 here. So this is only 1 period over threshold, so no action is invoked. So what it means is, like, if you have a threshold value of 3 and you have kept a matrix or the alarm state to be like, okay, let the resource breach or let the resource cross 3 units, I don't have a problem. But if suppose it crosses 3 for 3 consecutive seconds, so if you see here 1, 2, 3, 3 consecutive seconds or data points, then only I'll consider it as a breach, and then only I'll consider them as the data points to alarm, and I will take action on that. So imagine you're playing Call of Duty. Okay, so here what happens when you get hit and you take cover, your health actually regenerates, isn't it? So let's suppose the game has been programmed that if the person gets hit 3 times consecutively, then he will die. Otherwise, he will be able to recover. So if you get hit once and you go into cover, you will be recovered to the full state of health. That is 100%. But if you run out of luck and you get hit 3 times consecutively, you die, isn't it? That's where the action actually is being invoked. So that's what the health percentage or the data points to alarm actually relates to. So that's how the alarm actually works. And when you get this chart or this diagram, and if you want to analyze it, you have to just consider the threshold and the value, and you have to consider what is the evaluation period that you have and what is the data points to alarm, because these 2 things are very much important when you're trying to read or evaluate an alarm. And there are 3 states of the alarm. The first one is in alarm, which happens when the matrix or expression is outside of the defined threshold. So if you have a threshold of 5 unit and it matches the data point to alarm, then it moves to the alarming state. That is when the action is supposed to take place. The second one is okay. It means everything is okay and the matrix is within the threshold value. And the third one is insufficient data. So let's suppose the data points are not available yet, or there is no sufficient data to project for the alarm. So in that case, you get the insufficient data. So when you're working on alarms, please keep an eye on these states.